Hello everyone, friends. In this video I want to tell you and show you how to paint a picture that's quite simple but impressive. More precisely, two paintings. This is what's called a diptych, where each one complements the other. And here's the idea. As an option for celebrating a holiday together, you can come as a couple, for example, a guy and a girl, and each paint your own part of the picture. This picture is just one example. There are many similar options. I chose it only because it's quite simple and at the same time impressive. I made the task harder by drawing the left picture with my left hand and the right one with my right hand. Basically, in general, I'm left-handed. So you can see that even with the hand I don't usually use, it's not hard to draw this kind of picture. I decided just to motivate you even more to try painting a picture with oil, actually with oil paint. The technique is very intuitive. You can easily move things around, adjust and correct them during the process, so you don't need precise maneuvers at first. As you can see, I start my work by preparing the canvases. I found two old A3 sized canvases on cardboard that I once used as palettes during master classes, so here they are. First I covered them with a background color. I used turquoise, mixed it with white, and added some shades like a bit of blue FC here and there. You can also add a little yellow if you want. Well, in general, you don't need to paint it all in just one solid color here. If you have some beautiful shades showing through, it will make the painting more complex and accordingly more picturesque. The only thing is, look, if you want, like when we do workshops, if you want to finish it in one session right away in 3 hours, then we use this approach. Technique. First, you can use a solvent to mix the paints so that your canvas will be ready. In about half an hour, it will already be almost dry, because the solvent evaporates quickly. The only downside is that the smell from the solvent is often quite strong, so it's not always possible to do this at home. The second option, if you have acrylic, is to cover the background with acrylic like we do in the studio. It dries within 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can confidently start painting your flamingos on the dry surface, or anyone else for that matter. In this case, I actually didn't have the idea to paint it right away, instantly. Well, although, in principle, that's pretty much how it turned out. I covered the canvas with color, then left it to dry, but in the end, it didn't dry at all. Apparently, I didn't use the right medium, and I didn't use a solvent either. I thought I was using the right medium, but I think, most likely, I actually used oil mixed with varnish, which I made myself. As a result, my background didn't dry, and look, here's how you can deal with this. So, when I covered the canvas to start working, I took a rag or a napkin and just wiped it, starting from the central position, meaning the core. In general, when you start drawing, try not to find the silhouette right away, but start from that spot. Well, like I'm doing now, for example, I'm removing the background paint from those areas where it definitely won't be, meaning from the core. And then we start expanding the figure. The beauty of it is that if we went too far somewhere or did too much or made a mistake, we can just use our finger or a brush to cover up the area that was left without a background. Look, first I cleared the background color, of course, from the place where the flamingo will be, and it already became clear how everything will look in terms of shapes. As I mentioned, I began working on the left side with my left hand. I used colors, look, for the dark areas. This is permanent red matter. By the way, the paint brand is Masterclass, because permanent red matter I think isn't available from all other brands. Well, of course, you can use permanent red matter from any other brand as well. Sometimes the shades are just a little different. Look, you should do it this way, and that's the result. For the lighter areas, I used carmine, or more precisely, permanent rose madder. You can also use carmine. Here is also cadmium red, which is an additional warm shade. Yellow is used to make the color a bit warmer, and of course white. The picture is simple, so I don't see any need to explain every brush stroke right now. I mean, it's not a portrait, so it's not that complicated. That's why the only principle that's easiest to follow, so that you get a more or less good result. Actually, there are even two principles. Start with dark colors, since lighter colors can be easily applied over them, even if the dark is excessive. You can see the same thing with the beak. It's better to add more dark first and then add the light color on top as well. The second point is if you're working on an area and want to add a certain color, but the color starts to mix and it turns into a mess. Don't try to get the exact color and shape you want right away. Just take a napkin, a palette knife, or even your finger and remove the excess paint from that area. In other words, prepare the surface again so it's free of paint. Well, not completely free of paint, but without a large amount of paint. This will allow you to pick up a new color again without any problems. One more thing, what if you don't actually have any paints at home but you'd like to try? Write in the comments, message me privately, or call me if you'd like to try it, and come to the masterclass. If you're interested, write to me. If you have more detailed questions about painting, also write to me. I'd be happy to chat. I'd also like to say that now I'm looking at the background. Of course, I'm recording this after I've already finished everything. It's much more convenient this way. And about the background, I decided to make it a bit more complex. I initially wanted to keep the background, but it eventually seemed too simple and boring. So I actually mixed white with turquoise, mostly even just white. Since the background wasn't dry yet, I used the palette knife to mix white paint into the background, making it a bit more complex and giving it a more interior-like, in other words, a more interesting look. Something that provokes some thoughts and so on. To work well with a palette knife, you need to use quite a lot of paint. If you use very little paint, you won't get any interesting texture. The more paint you take on the palette knife itself, the more interesting these transitions, streaks, and so on will turn out. Hope the video was helpful. This is a pretty unusual video for my channel, but I think it's good to mix up my channel a bit with these fairly simple instructional lessons. And your feedback will be very interesting and pleasant for me if I hear any comments, opinions, or advice from you. I don't know, recommendations, but I wish you good luck and creative success.